It is raining hard at 11:22 p.m. at the Route 6 bus stop. Shaq huddles on a narrow bench in his soaked 6XL jacket. He just wants a ride home, without being noticed. Trouble starts when the ticket man won't let Maya board the bus. She is short by just 45 cents. He calls her trash from the foster care system. Maya looks at Shaq. She talks about the 7 foster homes she has lived in. She is tired of having no real home. Shaq feels his heart sink. He starts a sudden journey to help Maya find her pride again. Legal rules, police chases, and the dark Georgia night test them both. One big question remains. What can a man, with everything, do for a child with nothing? The rain hits the metal roof of the bus stop like small hammers. Water runs down the plastic sign in thin silver lines. Shaq sits low on the bench, his knees almost touching his chest. His hood is pulled tight over his head. He came here to be invisible. Tonight, invisible is all he wants to be. His truck broke down 2 miles back, and the tow company said morning at the earliest. He could have called someone for a warm ride. He could have waited in a hotel lobby instead. But something about this quiet road, this empty stretch of wet asphalt, felt like a small gift. Nobody here knows his name. Nobody wants a photo or a signature tonight. For one night, he is just a big man waiting for a bus in the rain, and that feels like rest. He watches the water pool in the cracked pavement outside the shelter. Somewhere far off, a dog barks twice and goes quiet. The bus stop smells like wet metal and old gum. He pulls his hood down lower. He lets his mind go still. It is the same trick he learned long ago, back when quiet was the only thing that ever belonged only to him. A yellow bus rolls up through the wet dark. Its headlights cut 2 long beams across the flooded road. The driver's name tag reads Clyde. His face is thin and tired, and his mouth is set in a hard line. He opens the door with a tired hiss of air brakes. A girl steps forward from the shadows near the bench. She is small, maybe 11 years old. Her sneakers are torn at the toe. Rainwater has soaked through to her socks. In her hand, she holds a plastic bag full of old receipts and crumpled bills. Her name is Maya. She counts her money under the dim bus light. 1 wrinkled dollar bill, soft from being folded too many times. 1 dime, worn smooth at the edges. 1 nickel, sticky from the bottom of her bag. She needs $1.60 for the fare. She has $1.15. She is 45 cents short, and she knows it before she even finishes counting, because she has done this math 100 times before. "I'm sorry, sir," Maya says. Her voice shakes, but stays steady. "Can I ride and pay you back tomorrow? I get my allowance from my foster house on Friday." Clyde has driven this route for 6 years. He has a supervisor who checks his cash logs down to the penny. He also has a write-up on his record from last spring for letting a rider ride free. He is not cruel by nature. He is tired and scared of losing a job that barely covers his rent. Rules feel like the only solid ground he has left. Clyde looks down at her like she's a stain on his uniform. "Rules are rules, kid," he says. "No money, no ride. Step back." "Please," Maya says. "It's raining. I don't have anywhere else to go tonight." Clyde's jaw tightens. "Not my problem." Foster kids always got some story. He leans forward. "You're trash from the system, and trash don't ride for free." The words land hard. Maya doesn't cry. She has heard worse. But something in her shoulders drops, like a small door closing inside her chest. Shaq watches all of this from the bench. He does not move at first. His instinct, honed over years in the public eye, tells him to stay still and watch. He has learned that watching first, before acting, keeps him from making things worse. He studies the way Maya holds her bag. He studies the way she does not beg. He studies the flatness in her eyes, like a person who stopped expecting kindness a long time ago. He remembers a version of himself, decades back, standing outside a corner store in Newark with empty pockets. He remembers the shame of counting coins in front of strangers. He remembers his mother, Lucille, telling him that dignity was the one thing nobody could take unless he gave it away. Clyde starts to close the bus door. "Move along," he tells Maya. "I got a schedule." That is when Shaq finally speaks. His voice is deep and quiet, not loud, not angry. "Hold on a second," he says. Clyde turns, annoyed. He sees a huge man rising from the bench, and his eyes go wide for just a moment. Shaq is 6'11". His shoulders fill the small shelter of the bus stop. Rain drips off the edge of his hood. Shaq does not announce who he is. He never does. He simply reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a folded $100 bill. It is the smallest bill he has on him tonight. This should cover her fare, Shaq says, and a few rides after that. Clyde stares at the bill, then at Shaq's face, half hidden by the hood. We don't make change for hundreds, he mutters, but his tone has softened just slightly. Keep it, Shaq says. Just let her on the bus. Clyde hesitates. Then he waves Maya forward with a stiff hand. She climbs the steps slowly, glancing back at Shaq like she cannot believe what just happened. She takes a seat near the back, clutching her plastic bag to her chest. Shaq sits down 2 rows behind her. He does not say much. He just wants to make sure she gets somewhere safe. But something about the quiet in this bus, the smell of wet vinyl seats, and the hum of the engine, makes him uneasy. He glances at Maya's reflection in the dark window. Her eyes are far away, staring at nothing. An old woman sits across the aisle. Her name is Mrs. Gable, and she has ridden this route for 20 years. She watches Shaq with quiet, careful eyes. She has seen kindness before, and she has seen it get punished before too. The bus rattles down a nearly empty highway. Rain streaks sideways across the windows. Somewhere out in the dark, thunder rolls low and long. Clyde keeps glancing in his rearview mirror at Shaq. Something about the man bothers him. He cannot explain it, but a small itch of suspicion grows in the back of his mind. A man who hands out $100 bills to strangers in the middle of the night does not sit right with him. At the next stop, Clyde pulls the bus over to the shoulder of the road. He stands and turns to face the back. Hold on, Clyde says. Something ain't right here. Sir, can I see some ID? Shaq blinks, caught off guard. Excuse me? You handed a kid $100 in the middle of the night, Clyde says. That's strange behavior. I got a responsibility to my passengers. Maya's eyes widen. He was just helping me, she says quickly. Please don't make trouble. But Clyde is already reaching for his radio. This is bus 417, he says into it. I got a situation. Possible trouble with a minor. Requesting police assistance at the Route 6 stop near Route 44. Shaq feels a familiar tightness settle into his chest. This is the exact scenario he tried to avoid his whole life after basketball. One photo, one rumor, and suddenly his name is trending for the wrong reason. He could simply get off the bus. He could walk away and let this go. Nobody would blame him. But then he looks at Maya. Her hands are shaking now, not from cold, but from fear. She has learned that adults calling the police rarely means good news for her. It's happening again, she whispers to herself. They're going to take me somewhere else. Shaq leans forward, careful with his voice. Hey, he says gently. Look at me. Nothing bad is going to happen to you tonight. I promise. She looks at him, unsure whether to believe another promise from another adult. But something about his stillness, the way he does not raise his voice, makes her want to trust him, just a little. Mrs. Gable, across the aisle, finally speaks. Her voice is soft but firm. Son, she says to Shaq, children who don't have a home often have eyes older than ours. That girl has seen things we can't imagine. Don't let her down now. Shaq nods slowly. He takes a long breath, the kind he uses before a big free throw, back when free throws were his life. He stands to his full height. His head brushes the ceiling of the bus. I'm not going to hurt anybody, he says to Clyde. I just want to make sure this child gets somewhere safe tonight. Clyde stares up at him, suddenly aware of how small he feels standing next to this giant. But pride keeps him rigid. I already called it in, he says. We wait for the police. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flash through the rain-streaked windows. A police cruiser pulls up behind the bus. Officer Griffin steps out, adjusting his belt, his flashlight cutting through the dark. He climbs onto the bus, water dripping from his hat. His eyes land immediately on Shaq. Sir, I need you to step outside, Griffin says. We got a report of a large man giving cash to a minor. That raises red flags. I was helping her pay her bus fare, Shaq says calmly. That's all this is. That's what they all say, Griffin replies, his hand resting near his belt. Step outside, please, sir. Nice and slow. Maya jumps up. He didn't do anything wrong, she shouts. He's the only person who's been nice to me all week. Sit down, young lady, Griffin says sharply. This doesn't concern you. It does concern her, Shaq says, his voice still calm, but firmer now. Everything happening right now concerns her. Griffin has worked this county for 11 years. He has seen strangers cause real harm before, and he has also seen good people get accused for nothing. Tonight, standing in the rain-soaked doorway of a rattling bus, he cannot yet tell which kind of night this is. His training tells him to be careful. His gut tells him something else, something he cannot name yet. Griffin studies Shaq for a long moment. There's something about this man's calm that unsettles him more than anger would. He motions with his flashlight toward the door. Let's step outside and clear this up, he says. Shaq steps down into the rain. Water pours over his shoulders. Griffin follows, hand still near his hip. ID please, Griffin says. Shaq reaches slowly into his jacket and hands over a driver's license. Griffin looks down at it, then back up at Shaq's face, half lit by the flashing lights. Recognition flickers behind his eyes, but pride keeps his voice firm. Doesn't matter who you are, Griffin says. Handing cash to unaccompanied minors looks bad. We're going to need to sort this at the station. She's a foster child, Shaq says. She was 45 cents short on her fare. That's the whole story. That's a story I'll need to verify, Griffin says. He turns and calls toward the bus. Ma'am, can you come down here, please? The young lady, too. Maya climbs down slowly, clutching her plastic bag. Rain soaks through her thin jacket instantly. Where do you live, sweetheart? Griffin asks her. I don't know anymore, Maya says quietly. My foster placement ended today. Nobody told me where I'm supposed to go next. Griffin's brow furrows. He looks at his radio, then at Shaq, then at the trembling girl in front of him. Something about tonight is bigger than he expected. All right, Griffin says. Everybody's coming down to the station. We'll sort out the paperwork there. They ride together in near silence, Shaq in the back of the patrol car, Maya wrapped in a scratchy blanket from the trunk. Rain drums steady against the roof. At the small county station, fluorescent lights buzz overhead. A woman named Ms. Vane sits behind a desk piled with folders. She works for Child Protective Services, and her eyes look permanently tired. She barely glances up when they walk in. Another placement disruption? She asks flatly, not looking at Maya directly. Case number, please. She doesn't have anywhere to go tonight, Griffin explains. This man was helping her when I intervened. Ms. Vane finally looks at Shaq, unimpressed. And you are? Someone who wants to make sure she's safe, Shaq says simply. Ms. Vane sighs, pulling out a thick folder with Maya's name printed on the tab. This child has been through 7 placements in 4 years, she says, like she's reading a grocery list. Behavioral concerns, attachment issues, difficulty adjusting. She's not a problem to be labeled, Shaq says, his voice quiet, but sharp now. She's a child who needs stability, not a checklist. Ms. Vane looks up, surprised by the firmness in his tone. With all due respect, sir, you don't know the details of this case. I know enough, Shaq says. I know she counted coins in the rain rather than ask a stranger for help. That tells me everything about her character. Maya sits quietly on a hard plastic chair, her wet sneakers dripping onto the tile floor. She stares at her hands. She has heard adults talk about her like this before, like she's a file instead of a person. Griffin clears his throat. Look, I checked his ID, he tells Ms. Vane quietly. He's not some random guy. He's Shaquille O'Neal. Ms. Vane's eyebrows lift slightly, but her voice stays professional. That doesn't change department protocol, she says. Emergency placement requires proper channels. Then let's use proper channels, Shaq says. Tonight. Right now? I'll wait as long as it takes. Hours pass. The vending machine in the corner hums, with a low, steady buzz. Someone's radio crackles now, and then from a back office, half words lost in static. A janitor mops the same square of tile 3 separate times, glancing over at the strange trio every so often. Maya keeps drifting in and out of sleep. Her head nods forward, then jerks back up. She fights to stay awake, in case something changes, while her eyes are closed. She has learned that things change fast when nobody is watching. The clock above the front desk reads 2:14 a.m. when a supervisor finally arrives, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Phone calls are made. Forms are printed. Shaq remains seated the entire time, his big frame folded uncomfortably into a small plastic chair, never once complaining. At one point, Maya falls asleep against his arm, exhausted from the long night. He doesn't move, afraid of waking her. Mrs. Gable, who insisted on riding along in a taxi behind the police car, sits nearby, watching the two of them, with a soft, knowing smile. Eventually, a temporary emergency guardianship form is approved, granting Shaq 24 hours of supervised custody, while a permanent solution is found. It is not much, but it is something. Maya stirs awake, as the paperwork is finalized, blinking in the harsh station light. What happens now? She asks quietly. Now you get some real sleep, Shaq tells her. And tomorrow, we figure out the rest together. They find a small diner still open near the station, run by a woman named Leola. She takes one look at the exhausted pair and doesn't ask questions. She simply brings out warm biscuits and hot chocolate, refusing payment at first. Maya wraps both hands around the warm mug. It's the first thing she's held. That felt like comfort in a long time. I have $17.42 saved up, she tells Shaq quietly. I keep it hidden so nobody takes it. I was going to use it to buy real shoes someday, not hand-me-downs. Tell me about the homes, Shaq says gently. Only if you want to. Maya stares into her mug for a moment. The first one was okay, she says. Then the parents got divorced, and I had to leave. The second one had too many kids already. The third one, the mom got sick and couldn't take care of anybody anymore. She counts them off on her fingers. It is a list she has memorized out of necessity. The fourth one was Silas. I don't like talking about that one. She pauses, turning the mug slowly in her hands. The fifth one moved to Ohio and didn't want to take me along. The sixth one said I was too quiet, like that was a bad thing. The seventh one just ended yesterday because the lady said her own kids needed more space. Shaq listens, without interrupting, without pity on his face, just steady attention. That's a lot of goodbyes for someone your age, he says finally. I stopped unpacking my suitcase a long time ago, Maya says. It's easier that way. You don't get as sad when you leave. Shaq looks at her worn sneakers under the table, the toes flapping loose. What size are you? He asks. 5, Maya says. But it doesn't matter. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be used to it, Shaq says. Mrs. Gable, who followed the taxi all the way to the diner, sits at the counter nearby, sipping black coffee. She watches the two of them, with the patience of someone who has seen many storms pass through this town. You did right tonight, son, she tells Shaq quietly. Not everybody would have stayed on that bench. I almost didn't, Shaq admits. Old habits tell me to stay quiet, stay small, avoid the cameras. Cameras don't matter at 2 in the morning, Mrs. Gable says. Only she matters right now. Leola brings over a damp cloth from Maya's forehead. She's running a fever, Han, Leola tells Shaq. Probably from being out in that rain so long. Maya's cheeks flush red, and her small body trembles. Please don't send me back to another house tonight, she whispers, panic rising in her voice. I can't do another new house. I can't. Shaq kneels down slowly beside her chair, bringing his face level with hers. Listen to me, he says softly. Nobody is sending you anywhere tonight. You're safe right here, right now. That's all that matters for this moment. Maya's breathing slows, just slightly. She nods, gripping the warm mug tighter. The next morning arrives gray and heavy with more rain. Shaq brings Maya to the local child services office to search her file for any family contacts. Ms. Vane, though still guarded, allows them into a small records room. Buried in an old folder, they find a name, Maya's grandmother, living in Savannah. The last known contact was 3 years ago. No phone number, only an old address. This could be nothing, Ms. Vane warns. Family members don't always want reconnection. We have to try, Shaq says. She deserves to know if she has real family somewhere. As they leave the records room, a man is waiting in the lobby. He is tall and wiry, with a false smile stretched across his face. His name is Silas. He was Maya's 4th foster placement, 3 years ago, and not a kind one. There she is, Silas says, stepping forward. My little girl. I heard she got lost in the system again. Maya freezes, her whole body going rigid. She grips Shaq's sleeve tightly. No, she whispers. Please, no. Not him. Silas smiles wider. I filed paperwork this morning to reclaim guardianship, he says smoothly. I still got legal standing from our old placement agreement. The state still owes me $850 a month for her care. Shaq feels something cold settle in his stomach. He steps slightly in front of Maya. She's terrified of you, he says. That tells me everything I need to know. That's not for you to decide, Silas says, his smile never wavering. I got paperwork. You got nothing but good intentions. Good intentions matter when a child is this afraid, Shaq says. Silas chuckles, shaking his head slowly. Kids exaggerate, he says. Foster kids especially. They learn it helps them get sympathy, get moved somewhere better. She probably told you all kinds of sad stories. She told me facts, Shaq says. Facts that are written in this file, if anyone bothers to actually read it. Silas's smile flickers for just a moment, like a light bulb about to go out. You don't know me, he says. You met her 2 days ago. I know enough, Shaq says quietly. I know fear when I see it, and she is terrified of you. That is not something a child fakes this well. Ms. Vane checks the documents Silas presents. Her face grows troubled. His paperwork is technically valid, she admits quietly to Shaq. The system doesn't always protect the child the way it should. Maya begins to cry silently, tears sliding down her face, without a single sound. She has learned, through 7 homes, that crying loudly gets you labeled as difficult. Silent tears are safer. Shaq crouches down to her eye level again. I need you to trust me a little longer, he says. I promise you, I am not going to let him take you anywhere. That afternoon, Shaq calls his personal attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who boards a private plane within the hour. By evening, she arrives at the small county office with a thick briefcase and a clear plan. We request an emergency family court hearing, the attorney explains. We present evidence of neglect from the previous placement. We push for expedited grandmother reunification. Can we do that fast enough? Shaq asks. Before he gets legal custody again? It's tight, the attorney admits. But it's possible. Judges respond to documented harm, not accusations. The attorney spends the next few hours on the phone. She tracks down old school records, medical notes, and a caseworker who handled Maya's file 3 years ago. Piece by piece, a paper trail forms, one that nobody had bothered to connect before tonight. This should have been caught years ago, the attorney says, frustration creeping into her voice as she reviews a stack of printed pages. Sometimes the system just moves too fast to notice the same name twice. That's exactly the problem, Shaq says. Everyone's so busy processing files, nobody stops to read them. That night, while Maya sleeps in a small guest room Shaq has arranged through a local shelter, he sits quietly nearby. He notices faint scars along her forearm, old and faded, but visible. Carefully, without waking her, he takes a photograph, documentation for the case, nothing more. The next morning, an emergency hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. at the Oconee County Family Courthouse. Silas arrives with a rehearsed, sympathetic expression, playing the role of a wronged, loving father. Inside the courtroom, the judge, an older woman, with sharp eyes, reviews the paperwork silently. Silas speaks first, his voice smooth and practiced. I only want what's best for my daughter, he says. The system separated us unfairly. The judge turns to Shaq's attorney. Your response. The attorney presents the photograph of Maya's scars, along with old case notes from her time in Silas's home, previously buried in the file. These injuries occurred under his care, the attorney states. The state's own records confirm unexplained bruising reported by a school nurse 3 years ago. Silas's composed expression cracks, just slightly. Old news, he mutters. Unproven. The courtroom is small, with worn wooden benches and a slow ceiling fan turning overhead. A few reporters from the local paper sit near the back. They came for rumors of a famous face in town, though nobody has confirmed anything yet. Maya keeps her eyes on her new sneakers. Shaq bought them, that morning, at a small shop near the courthouse, plain and white, nothing flashy. The judge looks at Maya, sitting small in the courtroom chair beside Shaq. Would you like to say anything, young lady? The judge asks gently. You don't have to. Maya's hands tremble in her lap. She looks at Shaq, who gives her a small, steady nod. She stands slowly, walking to the witness stand. I'm not trash from the system, she says, her voice shaking, but growing stronger with each word. I'm not a burden. I just want somewhere that feels like home. The courtroom falls completely silent. Even the ceiling fan seems to slow, its blades turning lazy circles above the hush. Even the judge pauses, visibly moved. Silas shifts uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The reporters in the back row stop, writing for a moment, pens hovering above their notepads. The judge reviews the final documents. They include a verified contact address for Maya's grandmother in Savannah. By now, the grandmother has been reached by phone, and she has agreed to take Maya in right away. Earlier that morning, before the hearing began, Shaq had sat with Maya in a small side room, while the attorney placed the call to Savannah. An older woman's voice, cracked with emotion, answered on the third ring. She had not heard her granddaughter's voice in 3 years, and she wept quietly when she realized who was calling. I never stopped looking for her, the grandmother said, her voice trembling through the phone speaker. The state told me she was unreachable. I wrote letters that never got answered. Maya had pressed her ear close to the phone, tears sliding silently down her face. The same quiet tears she always cried. Grandma? She whispered, like the word itself might break if she said it too loud. Given the documented history and the child's clear wishes, the judge announces, I am granting permanent guardianship to the grandmother, effective immediately. Mr. Silas's petition is denied. Silas stands abruptly, his composure fully broken now. This is ridiculous, he snaps. But his voice carries no weight anymore. Security quietly escorts him from the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, 48 hours after that rainy night at the bus stop, everything begins to change. Shaq stands with his attorney, reviewing final paperwork on a wooden bench beneath a clearing sky. He announces plans, quietly and without fanfare, to purchase a large plot of land in the center of town. On it, he will build a non-profit educational center. It will be a real home for children like Maya, called Haven House 8, named for the 8th chance every child deserves. Clyde, the bus driver, is later suspended and then terminated. A review uncovers a pattern of complaints against him from other passengers over the years. A woman who rode his route last winter comes forward. She describes a similar moment when he refused to let an elderly rider board over a short fare. The transit company issues a formal apology to Maya's family, along with a small settlement. Shaq quietly directs the money toward Haven House 8 instead of keeping it. Officer Griffin faces internal review for how he handled the incident. He later testifies honestly about Maya's fear, and it helps her case instead of hurting it. In his written statement, he notes that the girl's reaction in that courthouse hallway told him more than any paperwork could. He keeps a copy of that statement in his desk drawer, a reminder to slow down next time, before assuming the worst about a stranger. Ms. Vane, moved by the case despite her professional distance, personally expedites the grandmother's approval paperwork, cutting through weeks of typical red tape in just days. She stays late 3 nights in a row, calling background check offices and pushing supervisors for signatures that usually take a month to gather. I see hundreds of files a year, she tells Shaq quietly on the last day of paperwork. Most of them blur together after a while. This one didn't. For the first time since they met, her tired eyes hold something close to warmth. A week later, Maya stands on the porch of her grandmother's small blue house in Savannah. Sunlight spills across the yard, warm and steady, after days of rain. She wears a brand new pair of white sneakers, purchased with careful, deliberate normalcy from a local store, nothing flashy, just sturdy and new. Shaq stands nearby, preparing to leave, his simple car waiting at the curb. Maya walks over, no longer looking down at the ground the way she did at the bus stop. Will I see you again? She asks quietly. You'll always be able to reach me, Shaq says. There's a scholarship fund now, in your name. $5 million, for kids like you, growing up right here in this county. Maya's eyes widen. Just because of me? Because of every kid who's ever felt like trash from a system that forgot them, Shaq says. You reminded me why that matters. Maya glances back at the house, at her grandmother waving from the porch steps, at the quiet street lined with old oak trees. I used to think nobody would ever pick me first, she says. Not really first. Just first because they had to. Your grandmother picked you first, Shaq says. So did I, that night at the bus stop, even though I didn't plan on picking anybody at all. Maya smiles, a real smile, the kind that reaches her eyes. Guess we both got lucky then, she says. Guess we did, Shaq answers. He glances one last time at her new white sneakers, then at the porch steps behind her, sturdy and painted fresh. Go on inside, he tells her. Your grandmother's waiting, and breakfast smells like it's almost ready. Maya laughs, a small, easy sound, nothing like the tired silence from the bus stop days ago. She turns and walks up the steps, without looking back. It is not because she doesn't care. It is because, for the first time in years, she knows exactly where she belongs. Maya reaches up and takes his large finger in her small hand, the only part of it she can properly hold. She doesn't say anything else. She doesn't need to. Her grandmother stands in the doorway, watching quietly, a soft smile on her face. Inside the house, Maya's new room is waiting. It has a real bed and a dresser already filled with clothes that fit her, bought with care over the past few days. On the wall, someone has taped up a small paper calendar, marking the start of a school year she will actually finish in one place. Shaq smiles, a small, quiet smile, and slips his headphones over his ears as he walks toward his car. Behind him, Maya stands on her porch in her new shoes. She is no longer counting coins in the rain, no longer waiting for the next home to fall apart. The Georgia morning stretches out warm and clear. It will have a library, a garden, and rooms named after nothing but simple colors. No child will ever have to remember a house by the name of someone who hurt them. It will have a rule painted above the front door, plain and simple for any child to read. Nobody here is trash, and nobody here is alone. Years from now, other children will walk through those doors. They will arrive soaked from their own storms, carrying their own plastic bags of crumpled bills and quiet fears. They will not know the story of a rainy bus stop or a girl who was 45 cents short. They will only know that someone built a place where counting coins in the rain never has to happen again.